come on, Howie. Are you kidding me? All right. So welcome to the Eagle Eye Podcast. Reuben Frank, Dave Zangaro. We literally just finished recording a podcast, and the Eagles traded for Gardner Minshew. So here we are.
I mean, it was probably 15 to 30 seconds after we.
Unbelievable timing.
You only have yourself to blame because you tweeted that we were recording it this morning. Howie saw that and waited.
Unreal. So we're salvaging this pod. We couldn't let it go unmentioned that they just traded for a quarterback. So, Rube, initial thoughts: the Eagles trade a conditional 6th-round pick for Gardner Minshew.
I like it. I think quarterback depth in a 17-game season makes sense. Minshew's pretty good. Obviously, he didn't have a role there with Trevor Lawrence, and he's played well. And he had obviously set a lot of records as a rookie 6th-round pick. He had the best rookie season ever by a late round quarterback. But he played well last year for a lost cause team. Flacco's on a 1-year deal, and he's 36. We don't know much about Jalen Hurts. I don't think Gardner Minshew is going to play, but it's a good insurance policy at a position that's really important when there's a lot of unknowns already in that room. It's an upgrade from Nicks Mullens, my gosh, obviously. And there's really no downside. He didn't give up much. It's probably a 6, most likely. So I don't really see the downside. I like the move.
Yeah, if it's a 6th-round pick for your backup next year, no matter who the starter is, that's fine. And I think that is what Minshew is. I think he's a backup who can start games, and I think he's a pretty low-level starting quarterback, but a high-level backup.
Yeah, I think he's a medium-level starter. The thing about Gardner Minshew to me is that he can, like some backups, all right, they can get you through a game, maybe a couple games. If he had to play 4-6 games, you feel like he's going to acquit himself well. Yeah, do you want him as your number one? Probably not, ideally. But as a potential long range to me, there's 2 different backups. There's a guy who can come in hot and throw a couple passes, and then the decline starts really quickly after a game. But I think Minshew can, if he had to, can get you through a month, get you through a couple games. And he's, what is he, 26, 25, I think, 25 or 26. So, it's there's really no downside to this move.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a downside, it's that the Eagles are going to probably keep 3 quarterbacks on their active roster. It takes away another spot. It's not the biggest downside. I think they would have preferred, if Nicks Mullens worked out, they would have kept him on their active roster, I think. We're in a 17-game season. They value that position so much, like you mentioned. So, I think Flacco's still the number 2 right now. Do you think there's any possibility Flacco could get moved?
I think that's a possibility. I do. Why wouldn't you? If you got any kind of offer, why wouldn't you? I think Gardner Minshew is as good as Joe Flacco. Probably, maybe. I think so.
Could be better.
Could be better. And if you could get anything for Flacco, why wouldn't you do that? Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. It's a weird situation, which isn't uncommon for this team. The Dave Caldwell connections there. Caldwell working in the Eagles front office was there when they drafted Gardner Minshew. He was there for Minshew Mania and all that. Yeah, I think that there's a chance Minshew could be their long-term backup. The problem is, not a problem, but he's tasted being a starter in the league. He thinks he's a starter in the league. I don't think that's going to bother Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts is built in a way that he'll be able to handle anyone coming for his job. So I think he'll be able to handle it fairly well. And yeah, it makes sense. And they didn't give up anything. They gave up a conditional 6th-round pick Howie can find a 6th-round pick on the sidewalk later.
Yeah, he'll probably get a 6th-round pick back for Joe Flacco if he trades him and be back to where he started. And If that happens, so I don't think anyone's going to get too emotional about the end of the Joe Flacco era. And I think there's a fair chance. I think there's a chance that happens. But they're a little bit better than they were an hour ago.
Yeah, and Flacco's the backup now. He's been here all summer. I mean, Minshew's going to come in and have to learn the offense. So maybe we're looking at a situation where if Flacco does get moved at some point, it would happen during the season. If a player goes down somewhere around the league, then maybe you can get something for him and elevate Minshew to your backup role. That would make some sense to me.
Yeah, and I think Flacco played well enough last night. He's got a body of work. That team saw that, and he played a lot. And he played a lot this preseason, and I think teams kind of know who he is and what he's all about.
Maybe Minshew can get the most out of Andre Dillard. They're buddies. Played together in college. They're buddies.
Yeah. The funny thing is, Nicks Mullens and C.J. Beathard were teammates with the 49ers, and C.J. Beathard now moves up from 3 to 2 with the Jaguars because his friend was cut by the Eagles. And that's courtesy of Tim Kawakami, former Eagles beat writer before your time, currently covering the 49ers and all things Bay Area.
So, Rube, I'm driving to MetLife Stadium last night, and the worst thing is I'm sitting in traffic, and I'm seeing the thunderstorm, come in, and I'm about to go through the toll complex, right before MetLife Stadium, and there's lightning everywhere. Lightning bolt hits my car, and, it was so loud, and it shook my car. My hands are, tingling, and I kind of roll through the easy pass lane, and I realize my car's not working, so I pull over. And now, you're sitting on the side of the road, and you're like, did that actually just happen? But yeah, it was a wild night. I watched a little bit of the game. I ended up making it to the stadium in time for the game, but a wild start.
It was one of the wildest storms I've ever seen. And we must have been right near each other because it wasn't really raining on the turnpike on the way up. And the traffic was awful. It was Friday afternoon, but you could just see it was getting darker and darker and blacker and blacker. You could see lightning over Secaucus and lightning over Montclair. It was just everywhere. And
you're sitting in traffic. If I could go, I'd get there before the storm, and you just couldn't go. And
and it was scary. I mean, and it just the roads flooded so quickly because it was raining so hard. It was and I can't complain because I did not get hit by lightning. So
yeah, but I wanted to. I mean, they're not going to hear this, but the police officer that helped me out, the fire department who came and checked the car out, the guy, the tow truck, everyone was so nice. So I appreciate it. I'm good. If the car is the worst thing that happens, that's fine. So yeah, I was. And everyone. It was funny because everyone at the stadium's like, you came to the game, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm up here. I'm an hour and a half from home. One of these guys is my ride home. I have some people who live kind of close to me, thanks to Mike K from NJ.com who drove me home. So it was.
How did you get from your car to the entrance of the stadium?
I Ubered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So tow truck. It's weird. I had to get a tow truck since it was on the turnpike. It's a contract with the turnpike. So they had to tow me, but I have AAA. So I got it towed to a place, and then I called AAA because I'm like, I don't want to pay. It's really expensive. So then I used AAA to tow it to the mechanic. And then I got an Uber to I sat in the back of a cop car yesterday, the first time in my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it was, they wanted me to get out of
a cop car?
No, never.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I look like I have more street cred, but the guy was nice. But the guy on the phone told me to get out of the car, and I'm like, I'm not getting out of my car. I know that it's probably dangerous, but it's there's a lightning storm. I just got struck by lightning. And I know they say it doesn't strike twice, but I'm not gonna test that. So then the cop came and he let me hop in the back seat so I could stay a little bit dry.
All of this for the most meaningless preseason game ever.
You know what, though? I was happy they played it because I would have been so miserable if I did all that. Then I got there and they were like, we're not playing this game. And it actually ended up being a pretty entertaining game.
It was entertaining as meaningless preseason games go. And it was it was an interesting night. And I'm just glad you're okay. And the podcast must go on.
Yeah, it must go on. Everyone keeps asking me if I have powers yet, and I haven't. I don't know. Like I'd like that'd be cool.
Yeah,
be cool.
Yeah. There's got to be something there.
Yeah, well, I might not find out for a while, but
you could secretly watch practice with training.
That'd be a great superpower. I'd love that. So the game, and we want to thank the NFL for changing the preseason overtime rules. I was last night. There were a few people in the press box who didn't realize it, and they were getting nervous. And I was like, "Don't worry about it. There's no overtime in preseason anymore, so we're getting out of here no matter what."
Eventually, yeah, and it was an entertaining game, and thank God the preseason's over. I look forward to the preseason games, and it is fun to watch the young guys, but I don't know how they ever played 7 of these things. 7
games. When was that?
There were some years, like I think it was in the 60s and 70s, and they only played 14 regular season games.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, and they would play. They would play 6, and then they would do like, you know what they did? There would be cities that wanted to put on an exhibition game and as a marketing thing, and the Eagles and every team did this. They would play in cities, in weird cities that didn't have NFL teams. And I remember
like a barnstorming tour. Is that what that means?
Kind of. The team was trying to like promote itself, maybe to get a franchise or something. I remember the Eagles playing a game in Jackson, Mississippi against the Jets, a preseason game. Wow. I remember John Sacca played in that game for the Jets from Del Rey, Tony's brother. And they played a game we were down at Carter Finley Stadium in Raleigh, North Carolina State Stadium. We played a game there. But back in the day, they would play a bunch of those games in weird cities, Kalamazoo and Buffalo and the cities that didn't have, that got franchises later, but they would play in State College. In the Southeast. This preseason would go on forever. Training camp was 6 weeks. So thank God we don't have to deal with that.
Yeah. All right, let's go through last night's game. The finish was exciting. Not what the Eagles wanted. Not that, anyone's really going to lose sleep over it, but Nick Sirianni was about to get his first win. And then, the Hail Mary and Michael Jacquet making a mental error. And
it was an interesting last minute for Michael Jacquet.
What a roller coaster, huh?
Yeah, we'll get to that. I don't think I mentioned him in my observations, but
let's go through some of your obs though. Like what stood out? Because look, it's meaningless for a lot of people, but not for everyone. There are some of those guys who are trying to make a roster spot. And Nick Sirianni even brought it up after the game. He said he even talked to his team. He pointed out guys from the past who made the roster on the last preseason game. So it can happen. I think most of the roster is set before they enter it. But, I even asked Joe Flacco about it. I'm like, he was asked, how do you get up for this game? And then I said, well, you're kind of like, you're on the team, but you're playing with some of the receivers you're playing with are fighting for roster spots. And he goes, yeah, that's what, I'm not going to let those guys down. Their job's on the line.
Yeah, and some of the guys that we saw will never play football again. This is it for, a handful of guys. That was our last game. And so it's easy to dismiss it. For a lot of guys, it's the end of a, lifelong dream. So, one dropped pass, one missed block, one missed tackle can change the course of your life.
Yeah, it is really wild. So let's go through. What were some of the things that stood out to you?
Oh, well, I thought we were going to do it the other way. I thought you were going to bounce them off me.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, we can do that. We can certainly. Sorry, we can do that. Let's start with J-Jaw,
okay.
Which is, it's kind of, look, we know where he is in his career, but it's still shocking. In the fourth quarter, I look out there at the 3 receivers, and it's Andre Patton, who came here late, Mark and Michelle, who came here late, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who's a second-round pick. We're at the point now where it's not even like, can he be worth a second-round pick? It's, can he do enough to make the football team?
Yeah, and he certainly helped himself. He had a couple catches. Yeah, he had one, I think, on the same drive just before the touchdown, 15-yarder. I still think that he has some sort of advantage because he's so different than the other receivers. And if you're Nick Sirianni and you're just looking at I think Nick Sirianni owes it to J-Jaw to only evaluate him on what he's done since Nick got here. So to him, he's not a second-round bust or a hugely disappointing draft pick. He's another young receiver who has a little bit different skill set than, Quez and all those guys, Hightower and Rager and Devontae, the speed guys. He has a different game, and it's closer to Fulgham. So I think if he's competing with anybody, it's Travis Fulgham, who didn't help himself, at the end of the game. Now, that wasn't a great pass from Nicks Mullens. But I'm not sure he ever really had control of it. But when you're trying to make the team, it's a play. You got to make that play, even if it's not a
fumble.
Pass. Yeah, the fumble or whatever drop. It was. I'm not even sure he ever had it. But
I can't fault him too much for that.
Oh, I can't either.
He was fighting for the end zone. Yeah,
I'm not faulting him, but the point is that if he does make that play, it can really help him.
And he's a guy that we talk about a lot of training camp, had so many opportunities to make big plays, and so many of those he didn't make.
Yeah.
He was a disappointment this summer, and he had good moments, but he came into the summer as a starter. He was like the opposite of Quez. He came into the summer as a starter and lost the job and is fighting for a roster spot. Quez came in fighting for a roster spot. He didn't dress last night. That's how far he came. He did, but he's wearing a cap in the second half.
Yeah. It's a stark contrast. And I don't know how many, I probably get asked about Fulgham more than any player on the team other than Jalen Hurts, because he had the 5 games that, there were 5 games that it was a stretch, 435 yards in 5 games, a stretch that guys like Deshaun, Macklin, Mike Quick, T.O. have had in Eagles history, wide receivers. I think Kevin Curtis had one, but like half of the yards were in that one Detroit game when he had 221, I think. So when, you've seen him do it and you've seen him, for the other guys, it's all projection. He's had a better stretch than anybody. He had more yards in that 5 games than anybody else on the team had all year last year, as far as wide receivers. So it's just weird. It's one of the weirder stories to go from getting cut by 2 teams to having those 5 games to disappearing and then having a really mediocre training camp. I still think he's more likely to stick than not, and we'll look at the roster in a little bit. But because you've seen him do it, you keep saying there's something there. It has to be there. And you see it at times, but it's just a bizarre turn of events. And if you had to pick a roster right now and choose between J-Jaw and Travis Fulgham, I would probably choose Fulgham just because I've seen him do it. But I don't know. I just don't know. I always tell myself there's something there with J-Jaw. I'm always wrong. I've been on the wrong side of that one for 2.5 years now. I just keep waiting for him to do it consistently, and he hasn't. He had an okay camp, nothing special. But I don't know what's going to happen there. But they're both fascinating stories. They're both really. Hightower is in that mix also, but he was a 5th-round pick who most of the time has played like a 5th-round pick. He had a couple catches last night. But those two other guys are mysteries. And, either one of them, if they get cut, I wouldn't be surprised if they're out of the league, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're, in a year, I wouldn't be surprised if they go and play well somewhere. You just don't know.
Yeah, and receiver, we'll get to my 53-man projection a little bit, but receiver is one of the tougher positions on this team to figure out, I think.
Yeah,
how about
really
Kenny Gainwell last night? I thought in the beginning of camp he looked like he was kind of watching it all happen around him, but in the last few weeks, you're seeing that this kid's going to play a major role in this team.
Yeah, and I think that's what last night showed me, was that he's not just going to be. We know he's we've known for a while he's going to make the team. We've known for a while he's going to have a role. He's going to have a big role.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really becoming clear is, and I'm not saying he's going to take over Miles Sanders, starting running back, but I don't think the gap between Miles' touches and Kenny Gainwell's touches is going to be huge in most games. I can see Kenny Gainwell getting, 5 or 6 catches, 4 or 5 catches and 6 or 8 carries, maybe 6 carries. I mean, I don't know. It's going to change, but I could see him being a 12 touch guy and Miles being an 18 touch guy, 16 or 18. I don't think it's going to be a huge disparity. And I think there'll be games where, two things about Kenny Gainwell, Dave. Number one, he's a better runner than I thought. Like, I knew he could catch. We know he's got really natural hands, and he catches the ball in a way that he's able to get yards after he catches it.
He looks like a receiver.
He at times he looks like a receiver with his instincts, the way he sees the field, the way he eludes contact.
And at times he's going to be a receiver for this team.
Yeah. But he runs tough.
Mm-hmm.
He runs tough and he runs hard and he's got good cutback ability. He's a better runner than I thought. Something else that really impressed me last night was, I think it was in the first quarter, he got kind of cheap shotted by one of the Jets D-backs. And they called a penalty. It was a late hit. He got slammed to the ground. And most young guys, I think, in that situation, they jump up, they push the other guy. They got to show off their macho, whatever. He jumped up and ran back to the huddle. They called the penalty, and Eagles got 15 yards. Now, if he pushes that guy and loses his cool, it's offsetting penalties, and the ball is right where it was. And I think it was like a 2-yard loss. But instead, they get 15 yards and a first down, a new set of downs. I thought he showed great composure. And those little things, add up. And I think when you're evaluating a player, you look at that, and that's just court awareness and understanding the situation and being a professional as a young, 22-year-old 5th-round pick out of Memphis, to show that kind of composure when you get slammed to the ground in a preseason game, just jumped up. It was kind of like what you would see. I'm not going to make the comparison, but you'd see a veteran back do that. Just don't be the second guy, because that's the guy that they'll flag, that second guy. Just jumped up, didn't bother him. I was pissed. I was like, man, he threw him another. Just jumped up, went back to the huddle, flag, 15 yards. It was impressive.
Yeah, he's going to play a lot. Big role. Let's get to a few more things here. Andre Dillard, one awful false start penalty aside, held his own. I mean, he looked like an NFL player last night a little bit.
A little bit. You have to qualify it.
Yeah, you have to qualify it.
He did. He played well. And he looked athletic. It's the first time he's played in a game since the end of 2019. So it's the first time we've seen him since December of 2019. It's been a long time. I thought he played well. I thought he looked athletic. He was getting out in space and he was pulling and showing his athleticism. He sprung Gainwell a couple times on gains and whether
you jinxed him last night, by the way.
Who's that?
You did.
I jinxed Gainwell?
No, you jinxed Dillard. Because he told me you were about to write about Dillard, and then he had that false start.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, it was a bad penalty. But, I mean, 2 things come to mind with Dillard. Did he play well enough that they say, well, we're comfortable with him as our backup left tackle? Did they showcase him enough for another team to say, well, that Dillard's not bad. Maybe we'll up our offer for him from a 6 to a 4.
Or 4 footballs to a 6 football.
I mean, if there's a team that needs a left tackle, to say, you know what, he's not bad. He's got his first.
Yeah, and look, either way, it's a good sign that he played well, because either you feel more comfortable with him as your backup, or you're right, another team could be like, hey, well, we need a tackle, and there's a tackle shortage in the league. So
yeah. I mean, and this is coming off a 2-week layoff also. I mean, he just started practicing on Sunday, I believe. He practiced Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then played pretty well on Friday. So if I'm a team out there desperate for left tackle and I can get him for a mid-round pick, I'm I'm thinking about doing that.
One more, and I'm really combining two of them because two backup linemen fighting for jobs performed well. T.Y. McGill, who's really a great story. I mean, this is a journeyman defensive tackle. He's 28. He's been around forever. He's played on 20 teams, but he's done everything he possibly could this summer to earn a job, and he finished it off strong. He's gotten pressure every time he's been on the field.
Yeah, and he's not like one of those big, stout, linemen who's going to, stuff the run on 3rd and 1, but he gets after the quarterback, and he had 3 sacks. Yeah, I think they ended up with 4 sacks as a team. I think Patrick Johnson may have gotten one at the end last night, but I think he's got the team made.
Yeah, I have him on my roster, which we'll get to soon. And the other one was Teron Jackson, the rookie 6th-round pick, who, look, it's been an up and down training camp for him, but that's kind of to be expected for a 6th-round pick from Coastal Carolina. But we've seen flashes, and then those flashes showed up in the game finally last night.
He played really well last night, and I mean, he really showed up. I thought he was one guy that really helped himself in that game. I think he's probably still earmarked for the practice squad. I just don't know where you put him roster-wise.
Yeah, they're kind of full at defensive end. So
yeah, but it was
especially with Milton Williams playing so much there.
Yeah, it was definitely encouraging, though. We'll see what happens with him, and but he's gonna make it tough to cut him. I think they'll have to, but I'm sure they don't want to.
Yeah, that's what a guy has to do. Just make it tough on him, and then you feel like you did your job. That's all for the observations. I wanted to get your takeaway on this whole preseason, and we're not going to belabor the point too much. We've talked about it, but
we'll belabor it a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah, the starters didn't play much. Jalen Hurts gets 10 snaps in the whole preseason. Obviously, he would have played more than that if he didn't have the stomach issue, but it's not a lot of work, and there's going to be a long layoff, like a month layoff for him from playing in the preseason and playing in a regular season game. There's really 2 schools of thought. We've seen some teams still play in the preseason. The Chiefs have done it. They're playing their starters for half. The Ravens obviously do. They're trying to keep their winning streak alive in the preseason. But, last night I thought it was a good question. Nick Sirianni was asked if this is like a philosophy of his or if this is just a situation. And he said this was just a situation. They thought they got good work in the joint practices. And maybe that's true, but after seeing it this summer, it kind of seems like this is going to be his deal in the preseason.
Yeah, I can understand both, and I kind of wrote this last night. I can see both schools of thought playing and just focusing on Jalen, playing him and not playing him. Injuries were such an issue with this team, and they're going in really healthy to Atlanta. I mean, they're
starters. Yeah.
The starters, yeah. I mean, there's nobody. The only guy who's out, the only projected starter who's out is Rodney, who got hurt last year, and they're in pretty good shape, and they haven't been the last few years. So there's that. So it's just balancing. I don't think 10 snaps is enough, personally. I just think practice, and we were at those joint practices, and I mean, I think 3 of the 4 days were really, really. I think the second day against the Patriots was okay, but the other 3 days were pretty high level of football. Higher than a normal practice, considerably, like just amongst one team. But they're not a game. And I just think a young quarterback needs to play. Now, we'll know on the 12th. I mean, we'll see the first few series. We'll see if Jalen Hurts is rusty, if he's not prepared, if he's not ready, if he doesn't look right. And we'll know. I'm not even sure there's a right and a wrong here. I'm a little old school, and I think within not playing him, I think he got as much good work as he could.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But
he took a lot of reps in practices.
Yeah, I mean, there was Flacco didn't take a rep with the ones. So,
and they do have, this is kind of a weird schedule this year. I guess it's going to be the new normal, but they have an extra week before, they basically 2 full weeks before the Atlanta game. I asked Nick Sirianni, what are you going to do this coming week and he said it's just competitive practices. I think they're going to probably start gearing a little bit toward Atlanta, maybe not finite details, but they'll probably start running the plays they're planning on running against Atlanta. But they have some time here. I mean, it's kind of up to these teams how they want to handle this next week. And it seems like he's going to go pretty hard because these guys didn't play in the preseason game.
Yeah, he'll give him a couple of days off, it seems like, and then get started. I know he wants to be on the regular schedule by the start of next week. So we'll see how many days. We don't know how many days they're going to practice this week. I would guess he wants to keep them off their feet as much as possible. But I think if and I know a lot of people tweeted to me they're outraged. You know, the ones didn't play. Jalen Hurts didn't play. I would say this. I would say if you complained about all the injuries over the last 3 years, then it's really hard to get too up in arms about these guys not playing. And guys do get hurt in preseason games. And
another point, this team doesn't have great depth.
True.
They have it at some positions, but there are some positions where they really don't. So I think that probably plays a role. Like if you're looking at the starters and then you're looking at the backups and the drop off, it starts to make more sense because you really can't afford some of these injuries because you're looking at the guys who are going to take their place and you're like, well, the drop off is too great. We can't risk that.
Well, it's funny because I think one of the positions they have very little depth is linebacker, and those guys played a lot. They have depth. It's just, I mean, they have depth there in a way because I don't know if the starters are that much better than I think they are. I think safety, they don't have much depth. Linebacker, they don't have much depth. Offensive line. I'm sorry.
Corner.
They don't. O-line, there's a pretty big drop off from the first group to the second group.
Well, that's just because their starters are so good.
Yeah, I mean, I think with some of those backups, we don't really know. We don't know how good they are. But I mean, they're healthy going into Atlanta, assuming nobody gets hurt at practice, which the way they practice won't happen. They never did hit. I mean, they never did go live in training camp, which I've never seen before. It's a different kind of philosophy, and we'll know pretty early in the season whether it worked.
Yeah, and sometimes I don't even know if there'll be a direct causation. This team might just struggle early, and it doesn't mean that but like that's going to be a takeaway, right or wrong, that whatever they did in training camp either worked or didn't work based on how they play earlier in the season.
Yeah, I mean, if Jalen Hurts throws a pick on the second series against the Falcons, people are going to say it was because he didn't play in the preseason games. It's probably just a bad read. Hey, score big with the AAA Eagles MVP membership, along with the superb roadside assistance and discounts you've come to expect from AAA. Get exclusive Eagles-related perks. For details, visit AAA.com/Eagles. And Dave, I should have had you read that one today.
This was already a pretty tough year to figure out the 53-man roster projection there. I mean, Rodney McLeod, Landon Dickerson, where do they go? Tyree Jackson, is he on IR now, IR later? Linebackers is a Sama thing. And then Howie goes, here's another one. Here's a grenade he throws at me. Hot potato in your lap. Gardner Minshew, here he is. You have to keep 3 quarterbacks now.
You don't have to.
You just trade for a guy and cut him?
No, I'm not saying cut Minshew. I'm saying you could trade Flacco, or maybe Howie will trade Minshew for a 4. Who knows?
That would be something, huh? How mad would the Jaguars be?
I mean, apparently they've been trying to ship him for a while. A 6 is for a guy who's started 8 and 12, 20 games over the last couple of years. That's not, and played at a fairly high level.
That's pretty good.
That's not a lot to give up.
Yeah. So I mean, look, if they don't make another move, we agree. There's obviously 3 quarterbacks on the roster. So we talked about the other positions on the 53-man roster. Someone's got to go.
That's the problem, and I would look at your linebacker situation. I mean, it might be a situation where you have to IR somebody that you might have wanted to try to. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a guy like there's a few guys who you have on your roster who could be in trouble right now. Like,
Gennard Avery,
Patrick
Johnson, one of those
Andy
guys.
Adams or Patrick Johnson. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at
even Jacoby Stevens, maybe
you can look at the offensive line. I have 9, which I think is a good number, but they could keep 8 if they wanted. They could cut Sua. I don't think they would do that.
Sue would probably be the guy out of that group. I mean, he would have to be the guy. Is there not?
I don't think they will do that. I think it's going to come from defense. At least from my 53, I had 1 extra player on defense. I had 26 on that side of the ball. So now that you add 1 on offense, I think you'd probably have to go 25, 25, 3.
Yeah, I think it'll be one of the backers. I think it would be either Stevens, Avery, or Johnson. Sean Bradley, how convinced are you he's on the team?
Not totally convinced. I like what he brings special teams wise. I think he's a good special temer. I mean, even Davion Taylor, who's been injured, they could IR him.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't want to do that. We don't really know how serious it's serious enough that he's week to week. That would be a disappointment, but
yeah,
they might have to. That would surprise me. I think the other moves are probably a little more likely, but anything's in play right now for that extra spot.
Yep. Minshew mania.
God, I'm never going to use that phrase.
I've used it already multiple times today.
I will not. I will never use that. You got to do more than go 6-6 to have a mania named after you.
We like alliteration then.
Well, there's a lot of other things, There's a lot of whatever. Yeah, I will not go there.
Mediocre Minshew.
That's probably a little closer to what I'm thinking.
All right, so running back, I kept 4. Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, Jordan Howard. The tough cut here was Jason Huntley.
And Huntley had a really good start, and he's been banged up. Ribs, I think. I mean, after 2 weeks, Jason Huntley really, I thought, was looking great. I mean, he was explosive and fast and hitting the corner and making big plays.
Every day he was making
every day. But he just hasn't been able to go. So I would agree with those 4. And Jordan Howard's a good story. I mean, when they re-signed him, I mean, I thought they were just kind of doing him a favor. Let you be in a camp. He's gone from, when the Dolphins cut him last year, I think it was in October, he said he thought his career was over.
Yeah.
And he ended up back here on the practice squad and played very briefly. They re-signed him, and I mean, he was probably last on the depth chart at that point behind Huntley and Kerryon Johnson and anybody else, Elijah Holyfield, who, by the way, doesn't look bad, Elijah Holyfield. But yeah, Jordan Howard has kind of resurrected his career, and it's kind of like Jay. I mean, he's a different kind of back than the other guys. He's the only real. I mean, Boston Scott can run inside, but Jordan Howard's an inside runner. He's a tough inside runner, and I think if he stays healthy, there'll be a role for him.
Yeah, it's now the other thought here is the Eagles can play some games because a lot of the bubble players are vested veterans. And so for those who don't know, if you have a vested veteran, which means 4 years of NFL service, and he's on your roster in week 1, his salary is guaranteed. Whereas if you cut him and you bring him back in week 2, his salary is no longer guaranteed. You basically pay him by the week. So they can play these games. I mean, there are a few of them. There's Jordan Howard, Richard Rodgers, Andrew Adams. All these guys are vested. So there's a chance they could play that game with some of these guys. And Jordan Howard, there were no calls coming for him not that long ago. So maybe the Eagles are thinking, we might lose Jason Huntley, but if we keep him now and then we play, like they could keep Jason Huntley, put him on IR, cut Jordan Howard, bring him back in week 2. There's a lot of games they can play. And that's what is another reason this was so tough this year.
Yeah, there's also protected practice squad spots. And
and now you can keep 6 guys on your practice squad with unlimited experience. So you can keep a guy like Jordan Howard. You could put Jason Peters on your practice squad these days.
There's no rules anymore with the practice.
It's the Wild West of the practice squad. I love it.
It really is. You can keep like 50 guys if you want.
Receiver, I have 6. Devontae Smith, Jalen Reagor, Quez Watkins, Greg Ward, Travis Fulgham, JJ or Thego Whiteside.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, I mean, obviously Devontae, Rager, Quez, and Greg Ward aren't going anywhere. So it comes down to A, are they keeping 5 or 6? And B, if they keep 5, it's between Fulgham, J-Jaw, and Hightower. And if they keep 6, then you keep 2 of those 3. I mean, it's pretty clear. Although Andre Patton is clearly the best receiver on the team. And
Andre Patton and Marky Michelle have played well since they've gotten here.
Yeah, they have. And they both played well last night. Marco Michel's kind of funny. He's just a funny runner. Like when he has the ball, he's just kind of like.
Yeah, but he's a crisp route runner, and Nick Sirianni loves that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would guess they're both on the practice squad if they want to be. They're not going to – I wouldn't think they'd get claimed. I mean, Andre Patton's played for Nick before, and Marco Michel's been around, and I would keep him around. He might be able to play a little bit, but I do think it comes down to Fulgham, Whiteside, and Hightower. I'm not sold on. I still think it's likely Fulgham and J-Jaw both stay, and Hightower. I kind of agree with you there. I also think there's a chance that somebody comes in, that they claim somebody at that position. We'll see what happens.
I think that's possible too.
I just don't see Hightower really helping the team. I think J-Jaw and Fulgham have a better chance to help the team once the season starts. I would keep Hightower around and try to develop him more. He did have a couple catches last night. He started to look a little more comfortable, but I just don't think he's ready to really be a productive NFL player every Sunday. So where I think Fulgham has shown he can be that, and J-Jaw has shown glimpses of it, not many, but I think they both have a better chance to help the team on Sundays than Hightower right now.
I'd agree with that. All right.
What if they keep 5? Who's your 5th?
Fulgham.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Tight end. This is tricky. And you got to kind of stay with me here a little bit. I have Tyree Jackson going on IR before cuts, which I don't know if that – I guess the argument against that is why did they do it already? Because there's 2 options here with him. They put him on IR now and he's done for the year, or they keep him on the active roster and then they put him on IR so they can bring him back this year. He played well in training camp, but I don't know if they really need him this year. And I think he's still a developmental player. So I have him going on IR.
And guys you're talking about possibly missing, 6-8 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So the guys I have on the roster, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, and Jack Stoll. I have them cutting Richard Rodgers because he's a vested veteran. There didn't seem to be a lot of interest in him in the offseason. I don't think he's going to get a job. And you could even put Richard Rodgers on the practice squad.
Yes, you could. I didn't really do anything in training camp.
Really quiet.
Really, really quiet training camp. Jack Stoll catches the ball well, and young kid. I think you might be onto something. And I think there's a bigger chance they lose Jack Stoll if they cut him than they lose Richard Rodgers. And, they paid Jack Stoll $122,500 guaranteed as an undrafted rookie. That's a lot of money. That tells you they really like him. They really want him here, part of the program. So
you always follow the money with those guys.
You have to. And who was it last year? Was it Sua or 2 years ago?
That was 2 years ago. Last year was Luke Juriga and Noah Tagoa.
Yeah. So I kind of agree with you here with Ertz, Goddard, and Jack Stoll.
Yeah. Okay. So offensive line, I have them keeping 9 with Landon Dickerson on the NFI. I don't think he's ready to play. But this was tough because my cuts here are, well, let me go through the players I have on the roster first. Mailata, Sayamalu, Kelsey, Brooks, Johnson. There's your starting 5. And my 4 backups are Dillard, Driscoll, Herbig, and Sua.
Yeah. We saw a lot of Driscoll, Herbig, and Sua last year. I think it makes sense. There's guys you're cutting who, have played a lot of football. And
yeah, the one that I struggled with was Brett Toth because I know they like him. They lost him once before, and I know it hurt them.
He went to Arizona, right?
Yeah, I don't have a spot for him if you're keeping Andre Dillard.
Yeah.
If you keep Andre Dillard, you have a backup left tackle and you have a backup right tackle. I can't justify keeping another backup tackle, whether it's Toth or LaRaven Clark.
Yeah, you just can't risk that. I mean, to me, Driscoll's more than just a backup right tackle. I mean, I think he can do other things, but yeah, I mean, that's how it comes down. I mean, you're cutting Matt Pryor, who has started a bunch of games for this team, but it's time to move on. LaRaven Clark's the guy who's played a lot of football. I mean, Coyote Awasika, I would think, would be on the practice squad.
They all but covered that dude in a sheet this preseason to hope no one saw him.
Yeah, they really did. Yeah. So I kind of think you're on the right track here. If they keep any of those other guys, and LaRaven Clark just came back from his injury like a week ago.
He looks pretty good, by the way.
He does. I'm not really. I still think there's a chance he sticks.
I do too. I just, in my mind, I couldn't justify 3 backup tackles.
Yeah, it's a weird deal. And
if they trade Dillard, then all bets are off. Then maybe, either Toth or Clark make the team. But if he's here, I don't know how you do it.
This is what happens when you have a guy who only backs up one position, only plays one position. And, I wonder if they'll start cross-trading him at right tackle a little bit now that Mulata is clearly the left tackle.
Problem is there aren't a lot of reps to go around.
There aren't any reps. Maybe this week.
Cross-train him. Yeah, maybe this week you're going to cross-train him at second-string right tackle. Well, guess what? Once the season starts, there aren't a lot of second-string reps.
Yeah, that's why I really thought there would be value in just saying, look, Mulata's our left tackle. Let's get Dillard some work at these other spots during the training camp portion when you're able to get reps for the twos. But that didn't happen. And, he got hurt, so we don't know what would happen. But, yeah.
Let's flip to defense because we're lagging here.
I don't think of it as comprehensive, not lagging.
Defensive end, I have 4: Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan. Those 4 are no doubters. Teron Jackson's a tough cut here because he's shown flashes, but I think they can get him to their practice squad. I don't think there's a lot of snaps to go around, especially because Milton Williams, who I have listed as a tackle, has been playing on the edge quite a bit.
Yeah, they've got a real abundance of edge rushers, and Teron Jackson would be a tough guy to see go, but I would think they'd be able to get him to the practice squad, and he really helped himself yesterday, but there's just nowhere to put him.
Yeah. All right. So defensive tackle, I have 4.
He's even talking fast because he thinks.
I feel like people are listening. Like, oh, how we're only on defensive end. we've got the rest of the defense to go. These guys the roster is gonna be created. But
the defense is a lot more cut and dry, I think. But yeah.
Well, not exactly. Defensive tackle, I have Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Milton Williams. Those 3 are locks. Then it gets a little tougher. I have T.Y. McGill on the team. I think he's done enough to earn a spot over Hassan Ridgeway. But I like that's in a meritocracy, that's the way it works. But Hassan Ridgeway they like. And he's played under Gannon before.
Yeah, he played well. He was in Indy.
He was there
with Gannon. But look, Ridgeway is. I mean, you can find Hassan Ridgeways if you need Hassan Ridgeways. He played in 14 games the last couple of years. Like, got hurt both years. I don't think he did much of anything. I don't remember him making any big plays in training camp. And
pretty quiet training camp.
I'm sorry.
Pretty quiet training camp.
Real quiet training camp. So I don't have a hard time putting McGill ahead of Ridgeway. To me, it's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, and then Marlon Tuipulotu, 6th-round pick. I have him as a cut. Look, he actually made some plays in that 3rd preseason game, and I thought he started to make some plays against the Jets, which was a good sign because before that, man, I didn't see it at all. But he showed enough good flashes that I think he's developable.
He had a nice tackle for loss late in the game, and. But that's what you expect from a late round guy. Put him on the practice squad and try to develop him.
Okay, linebacker.
We've got like 17 linebackers, so let's get into it.
This is the one where even I look at it like, oh, like what was I doing? But let me explain it. I have them keeping 8 linebackers, and I'll give you the names and then I'll go through it. Eric Wilson, Alex Singleton, TJ Edwards, Jacoby Stevens, Sean Bradley, Davion Taylor, Jannard Avery, Patrick Johnson. So
Barry Gardner, Quentin Caver.
My reasoning here
Matt
is
McCoy.
that Davion Taylor and Jannard Avery are both hurt. But they both might be able to help the team this year. So you carry them through and then you IR them. So really you're keeping 6 linebackers and you're going to put Avery and Taylor on IR once you get through first cuts.
Yeah, and that does make some sense. I still think it's time to kind of give up on the Jannard Avery thing, and you cut him and you hope that nobody remembers you traded a 4th-round pick to the Browns for him. I just don't see him helping this team.
Yeah, the Sam position, and we've talked about this, the Sam position, again, in defense is kind of a hybrid. It's a sometimes off ball, sometimes rushing linebackers. So they have some other options. Alex Singleton could do it. He hasn't done it yet. He's starting to make more sense in that role. Ryan Kerrigan could do it. So they have options instead of shoehorning a Jannard Avery onto the roster. And if you're trying to get your best 11 guys out there, I don't think Jannard Avery is one of them. But until we see it, it's hard for me to just make that leap.
And plus the fact that he just can't stay healthy.
Injured both groins this offseason.
We never have really gotten to see him do anything. He had a great game against the 49ers last year, and that's like he's living off that. So I think it's time to end that experiment.
I don't disagree with you. Patrick Johnson has played well. He got a shoulder injury, but he returned to the game. When that happened during the 3rd preseason game, I thought, here comes the stash. But he went back in the game.
Yeah, interesting player. Probably not really ready yet, but definitely has a skill set that's intriguing.
Yeah. All right, cornerback, I kept 5. Darius Slay, Steve Nelson, Avonte Maddox, Zach McPherson, and the last one in, Craig James, really as he's the last option corner, but he's a standout special teams player. And you need at least a couple guys who are big special teamers.
Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of special teamer Josiah Scott is. And by the way, it was good to see Zach McPherson get that pick on the conversion. It was a nice play. He's kind of bounced back a little bit.
I agree with that.
Hit the wall.
It was a rough stretch for him.
Yeah, which that it's going to happen to most rookies. So how do you,
especially at that position, you're not gonna, you're gonna get beat sometimes.
Yeah. So how do you stick with it? How do you stay positive and keep working? And he made a big play there. That was good to see. Obviously, Slade, Nelson, Maddox, McPherson are here. To me, it comes down to James and Scott. Scott's been pretty good. I mean, he's kind of an interesting player. I didn't know much about him, but he doesn't look bad.
No, he looks good. So it came down to me, if they keep 6 corners, he's in. But can you justify keeping a nickel-only backup?
To me, it comes down to special teams with those two. And I know James is pretty good on special teams. I'm not sure about Josiah Scott. I think that's going to be the determining factor there.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way they'd keep Scott over James.
Probably not. You'd have to keep both of them. But I think it is possible, but yeah.
Especially when you hear about, Michael Clay talking about gunners like they're his children.
He really does.
Michael Clay is he cares about the gunner more than any other position, it seems like, on his special teams unit. And Craig James is a pretty good one. Yeah,
he is. I think it might have been. Was it you that asked Michael Clay about gunners?
I hope not.
In his last presser, and he's like, "Oh, a gunner question." He's like yeah, all excited. But yeah, Josiah Scott, long shot. Michael Jacquet. To me, Michael Jacquet, and you have him and Kevon Seymour going. Jacquet's such a weird player because I love how physical he is. I love how, I love how he tackles, he hits. He just can't cover anybody.
Yeah.
It seems like there should be a spot somewhere in the league for him, but he just hasn't gotten any better in coverage, and
he's limited.
He's just limited. He's just a limited player, but man, he does stick his nose in there.
Yeah. All right, the last position, safety. Rodney McLeod, I have him on the roster. Even if he's not ready for week one, I still kind of think he'll be ready within the 6-week window, which means he's, worth keeping on the roster. Then Anthony Harris, Kayvon Wallace, Marcus Epps. And I think they keep 5 because of McLeod's status. And I have the 5th one as Andrew Adams, who certainly didn't help himself in that 3rd preseason game. I thought he played pretty poorly, but he has the most experience. And if they need someone on defense, I think they'd rather have him than Elijah Riley, who was a really tough cut.
Yeah, I think Andrew Adams was one of the guys in that group on the Hail Mary who just didn't show any.
He got run over a few times last night.
Yeah,
too.
he did. Yeah, he did. He got obliterated by the running back on one of them. But yeah, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced Elijah Riley doesn't make it over Adams.
I'm not either, and that's what I have.
Yeah. But yeah, Riley's not bad. Riley's going to be around one way or the other.
Yeah, he's really taken a big step this training camp. He came in, honestly, for me as an afterthought, and now saying that he's one of the toughest cuts is saying something. Big special teamer, pretty much he's a core special teamer, all the big units. You know who's kind of a disappointment this summer to me is Graylin Arnold, one of those UDFAs who got paid a lot of money last year, and they liked him so much. And I didn't really see him show up.
Almost had a pick yesterday, dropped it. But yeah, I would agree with that. I'm not sure if he's a corner or a safety or both or neither. But yeah, he didn't really do much.
Yeah. And then there's 3 specialists who are running unopposed. So they're there. And that's my 53. It's going to be wrong. And I think this is a year where they might be active. They have a high waiver claim spot. When Doug got here, they claimed 3 guys. And sometimes we see that when a new coaching staff comes in, there's some turnover. And they claimed, do you remember the 3 guys they claimed in 2016?
No, Dave, I don't remember the 3 guys they claimed in 16.
It was Camus Grugier-Hill, who ended up being a really good claim.
Interesting.
And Bryce Treggs and Terrence Brooks.
Interesting. Terrence Brooks. Camus started on a Super Bowl team, so there you go. And if you want to heads up on who they might claim, watch the Colts waiver wire at 4:00 on Tuesday, because that's a pretty good guess. Hey, it's been a year full of uncertainty, but one thing is certain: Independence Blue Cross can help you make the healthcare decisions that are right for you. Choose coverage you can count on with the region's strongest network. Independence Blue Cross. Learn more at ibx.com.
Yeah, so I think we should probably wrap this up now, but I wanted to mention we have final cuts coming on Tuesday. It's kind of a weird situation because there's so much time here. Do you think they're going to make them like sporadically over the next few days? Because they have a weird advantage. There's still preseason games to play. So they could cut guys and try to sneak them through early.
Or, I mean, I think there's games as late as Sunday.
Yeah.
They could cut a guy and a team could claim him and play him on Sunday and then cut him and the Eagles could re-sign him. I mean, the whole thing is weird. And, they got rid of the 4th preseason game, which is kind of makes the whole scheduling thing strange. I don't think it's ideal to have to cut to 53 almost 2 weeks before the opener, but that's the reality. Knowing Howie, I think he'll start cutting Sunday or Monday.
Yeah, and honestly, if they probably have most of these decisions made, but if they practice on Monday, they could get another evaluation period if they really need it, or they could see how injuries are coming along.
I'm not sure what else you can learn after a month of training camp in an hour-long, no pads, no live contact, no hitting, shorts and shells, in the bubble, in the rain. So I think the decisions have been made, and it's going to be an interesting day. But I'm with you that I think there'll be a lot of activity Tuesday. I do think that the 53, once that 53 is set, that's only going to be the beginning. There's going to be a lot of activity after that.
Yeah, that's the case every year, but I think especially this year, those 53 guys aren't going to be the 53 guys they even get to the first game with.
Right. And as far as McLeod, I agree. I think that as long as they feel he'll be back by like week 3 or 4, which I think he should be. Injury was in December, mid-December. I think he's on the 53. I agree about Tyree Jackson. I think they shut him down. What are really the odds he's going to help this team? You can't keep a spot on the 53 for a project tight end. As impressive as he was when he was healthy, you just can't afford to keep a spot on the 53, hoping he might help you week 10 or something. And
if you IR him, you don't have to expose him to waivers, which is what you'd worry about.
Right. So you IR him, you shut him down, you get him healthy, and think about next year. And then I don't think Dickerson's going to play this year. I think they just want to get Landon Dickerson as healthy as possible, give him a year to learn under Stout, and let everything heal that's been hurt in college. And you see what Kelsey does this offseason, and whatever happens, I think he's a starter somewhere next year.
Yeah, you're probably right. All right. If you enjoy the podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like and subscribe button there. That's it. We'll be back with you guys next week. For Rube, I'm Dave. Thanks for listening.